Today we're painting some Elysians. Hello, I'm Marcel.
And I'm Mrs. Snakeworks. Here we have 60 terribly painted Elysians that need repainting into D99 for our Anphelion project series. We have been looking forward to doing this for a while. Shall we get started?
Is pink still a thing? I haven't heard much from pink lately. Anyway, so these Elysians were originally painted many moons ago. I now need to repaint them in the scheme of the D99. Here we can see a D99 guardsman in his nice green fatigues and weird greenish blue armour. I'm not sure what colour I would call that. Some sort of duck egg blue perhaps? How would you describe it? Whatever it is, it's an interesting colour scheme. I'm going to try my best to replicate the D99 scheme, but also as efficiently as possible. We have 60 men to paint, so what we're going to do is try and get the best results we can with the least amount of time possible. Some corners may have to be cut and some concessions may have to be made. Will we succeed? Let's find out.
In amongst these Elysians, we have this officer. Back in the day, we used to refer to him as Gorman. Can you guess why? How would you like this painting video to go, Gorman?
I want this thing to go smooth and by the numbers. I want DCS and tactical database assimilation by 0830.
I have no idea what those things are, so I'm sorry, Gorman, you're going to have to be disappointed. There's also this commander conversion I created a long time ago. It was supposed to be a militia commander for heresy games. She was converted from Saint Celestine, I think. Amusingly, her facial expression reminds me of Janet Jackson.
What have you done for me lately? Ooh, yeah.
I feel that's enough rummaging around old miniatures for the time being. Let's get back to the Elysians.
So first off, because Marcel was either A, in a rush, or B, an idiot, he left lots of scum and muck around the rims of these old Elysians. So first up, using Andy the knife, we clean it all off. Although cleaning it all off has removed the grit and God knows what else, it has, however, left us obvious scraping lines. We need to do something about that. To smooth that out, we are going to use some of these old Tamiya shading sponges I've had in my drawers for years without
Sanding sponges.
To smooth it out, we are going to use some of these old Tamiya sanding sponges I've had in my drawers for years without being used. I think they migrated there from under the sea.
Of course you forget, Peter. I was present at an undersea, unexplained mass sponge migration.
Oh, Ray, the sponges migrated about 1.5 feet.
Now, I see there's a new Ghostbusters movie coming out, Frozen Empire, or something like that. It does look a bit cartoony and childish to me at first glance. Have you guys seen it? What did you think of it? Was it any good? Is it worth a watch? Interestingly, the sanding sponges come with a lot of what I think are instructions. I can only speculate as I don't read Japanese. I do love the quality feel of Tamiya items though. Using the sanding sponge, I then give the rims a good rubbing. This quite quickly smooths off any rough patches and will hopefully leave us a nice smooth surface to paint. Now I think I started this project at the end of January this year, 2024, and it's now almost April. The only reason it's taken me this long to get this project done is because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out, and that took up quite a lot of my spare time. I did really enjoy it though. Well worth a play if you're into the old Final Fantasies. Anyway, we're digressing again, aren't we?
Oh dear, it would appear due to Marcel's harsh rubbing, he's broken one of the Elysians off its base. Luckily this only happened with the one, and all it required was a bit of superglue to fix. After sanding all those bases, we have a little dust build-up. So we felt before painting, it would be a good idea to get a big soft brush and brush off any dust, dirt and debris.
The word debris always reminds me of the old Toys R Us advert, when someone once told me they thought the lyrics were "There's millions of debris all under one roof." Here, you have a listen for yourself.
There's million sets Jeffrey all under one roof. It's called Toys R Us, Toys R Us, Toys R Us.
I do miss Toys R Us. All we have today is Smiths. Just doesn't feel the same, does it? Will Toys R Us ever return?
Our first paint-related product will be Astro Granite, a texture paint. We use the Astro Granite to add a little more texture variation to the bases. They were a bit samey before. The next texture paint is Agrilan Earth. This one is a crackled texture paint. We then apply a few more random patches of this paint to all of the Elysians. It didn't take long and it was really easy.
Now we could have used any old texture paints there to add some variation in the texture. Funny that key is in the name. But these were just the ones I had laying about to hand. I think they were still there from the previous video when we did the bases.
After a bit of retexturing, we are now ready to begin the painting, because you've written being the painting. My word, 60 men looks like a daunting task. Has anyone ever attempted 60 men at once? Oh well, there's no point worrying. Let's continue. We mounted all of the Elysians on painting handles for ease of painting. Sadly, we only have 6 proper ones. The other 54 had to go on old paint pots and cork bottle stops. We even ran out of substitutes, so used this thing. It's an old piece of scenery stuck to a base. I've no idea what Marcel made it for, but it will do for a handle, I suppose.
Now, do Games Workshop sell multi-packs of these gaming handles? If not, why not? I feel that would be a good idea. A pack of 5 or 10 would be fantastic.
It took a surprising amount of time just to get 60 men on painting handles, especially when blue tack was involved in attaching them. They also now take up a lot of space. Anyway, our first proper paint up for use today will be Lime Green by Vallejo. Using the lime green, we then repaint all of the fatigues on the Elysians that were previously painted a weird beige khaki colour. This paint didn't cover super well and actually required 2 thin coats. Duncan Rhodes would be proud.
Sadly, I still haven't gotten around to trying out Duncan's 2 thin coats paint range, although there is a 1 thick coat paint range by Peachy coming out soon, I believe. They look very good. I'll put a link up to those here if you want to check those out. Now anyway, have any of you guys tried Duncan Rhodes paints? If so, what are they like? Are they any good? And would you recommend them?
So, after a long session of painting clothing, all the Elysians had nice new green fatigues. I think it's the colour of my old Norwich High School uniform. Have a look and say whether it is or not.
No, that's what you're supposed to do.
Oh!
It's this colour.
Sort of. I remember the uniform being a bit more bogey coloured. I already think they look better than the previous scheme. Next up, we make a mix of these 3 colours. Pastel green.
Pastel.
Next up, we make a mix of these 3 colours. Pastel green, bronze green and Humbrol 65. It's a Gen 2, so I expect great things from it. This mix is to recreate the weird armour colour of the D99. Did we ever decide what colour that was? Using this mix, we then paint all of the armour panels on the D99, things like the helmet, chest and crotch armour, and also the knee and elbow pads. It looks a bit like my old skateboarding pads, with a bulletproof vest. I didn't ever used to skateboard, but okay.
You did?
When? That was you! Idiot. With all 60 Elysians in their new armour scheme, we have completed the biggest, fiddliest jobs of the repaint.
Now the armour colour I've come up with, I think is probably a little bluer than the original scheme in the artwork. But I suppose we get a little bit more separation between the fatigues and the armour this way. That'll be my excuse for it.
Next up is Vallejo Model Colour Buff, named after my muscly physique, I think. Using the buff, we then paint all of the little pouches on the Elysians. Mostly this is the water bottle pouches, but there's the odd sack here and there that needs attending to. The buff again needed a couple of thin coats to fully cover, but overall it was a quick step. Here we can see all the models lined up so far. We're getting into the groove now.
I do enjoy Madonna's 80s period. There were some all-time classics in there. I think Vogue might have been my favourite, you know, strike the pose. So today's big question is, which is Madonna's best song and why? Let us all know, as usual, in the comments below.
It's Vallejo Medal Colour Bronze Green up next.
Model.
You need to check this.
Medal.
That's what it says. It's Vallejo Model Colour Bronze Green up next.
Seeing as it fits with a bronze medal.
Using the bronze green, we then tidy up any of the straps that have been painted over accidentally. I think the correct term might be webbing. Can anyone tell us what webbing actually is? I don't think it has anything to do with spiders, which is an 8-legged creature that should not exist on this earth. With all the webbing tidy, I feel we are getting close to the end. We are really enjoying these so far. I hope you are too.
Also, I'm not sure if you noticed in the background there is a Valkyrie transport aircraft thing. That's going to get repainted as well later on down the line. It's just bland dark green at the moment.
Okay, it's now the time for Vallejo Flat Red. Using the flat red, we then paint little red stripes on the left-hand shoulder pads of the Elysians. This is to indicate their veteran status. If you've read the book, you will know that all of the D99 are veterans. That's kind of their gimmick. What we're painting here are what are known as markings.
I think I went to school with him, you know? Mark King? Marking? I'll get my coat.
At this point, I thought we had finished with all the markings, but it turns out we hadn't. There was still something else missing. Here are the 6 sergeants. It turns out that sergeants also have special markings. This isn't shown in the Anphelion project book, but it is in the Taros campaign book. Anyway, to perform the markings, we shall be using Pro Acryl White. Some say this is the best white in the game. The paint may be good, but these bottles are awful. You need to constantly wipe the tip. Using the white and our steadiest hand available, we paint a little white stripe down the back of the helmets. At first I thought the stripe was on the front, but after rechecking the art, it's actually on the rear, an easy mistake to make. And now, with the white stripes applied, all the Elysian markings are done. Well, the painted ones anyway.
Now we do still have the old decals to do, or decals as some of you like to call them, but we'll get to those later on.
It's dark grey now. Using the dark grey, we repaint all of the gloves that were previously painted brown. The hands are quite small, so again, this didn't take very long at all. While we had the dark grey out on the palette, we took the opportunity to also paint all the pipes and cable things on the armour. I've no idea what these are supposed to do. Are they some sort of oxygen tube perhaps? Also, the pose of this Elysian amuses me. It looks like he's doing Crispin Glovers' dance from Friday the 13th.
Now I would love to attempt that dance myself, but I feel I would probably end up smashing the room up and having a heart attack. I'll see if I can get Mrs. Snakeworks to do it.
It was at this point I realised there was another patch of armour on the back of the gloves, so we quickly went in and painted those. Tiny little recat Naugers.
Rectangle. What did you say?
You have written recat Naugers. Nauges.
Rectangles.
Look, all of your books are made up of made-up words. How do I know these aren't some of them? You would be forgiven for... What?
All of your books are...
Stop it! I'm trying to work here. You would be forgiven for thing here. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it?
Thinking.
What? You would be forgiven for thinking There isn't much left. Okay. You would be forgiven for thinking there isn't much left to paint. Well, there's not a huge amount, but we do have to tackle those visors.
Now, I was on the fence here, and that reminds me of an old story. When I was a youngster, I was going through a walk through one of the fields on the farm, next to a train track. And I was sitting on the old gate with my dear mother, and as the train went past, I had never done this before, I thought it would be a good idea to give all the passengers the finger. I got rather told off, and I did get a beating, I believe. Anyway, like I said, I was on the fence. I couldn't decide if I wanted red or green visors. So what I did is I put it to the old Instagram vote. The majority of you went with red, so that's what we went with.
First up, it's Vallejo Bottle Colour Black. If you watch the Siege Studio podcast videos, you will notice they talk about this paint all the time, so it must be good. Using the black, we repaint the visors. This sort of resets the area, as it were. They are quite small, so we did have to be quite careful with our application. Next up, it's the flat red again. We then paint the entire visor with the flat red, but to leave black in the recesses and on the edges to sort of give us a black line outlined effect. Next up, we mix in a little lemon yellow for a highlight colour. Using our highlight colour, we then paint the bottom half of the visors. We are attempting to sort of recreate a reflection effect. We then add a little more yellow in and then paint the bottom edges of the lenses and the corners where they sort of wrap around the helmets.
Now the lenses have this sort of 80s wraparound shades look to them. They sort of wrap around the face, but they're also squared off at the corners. They're quite cool.
We then return to the Pro Acryl White. Using the white, we do a final highlight on the hardest edges of the lenses and also do a couple of specular highlights on the top in the dark part of the visor. Well, I don't know what a specular highlight is, so it might be like a speculum. I actually thought you meant to say spectacular.
It's a spectacular.
With all those layers added, the visors are looking quite good. I feel the red was a good choice indeed. There is, however, one more step reared to finish them off.
Required?
There is, however, one more step required to finish them off. Why don't you check this before you get me to read it? Well, not very well.
I obviously miss a few things here and
A few.
Can you guess what it is?
If you guessed gloss varnish, you were correct and can award yourself 10 internet cookies. So it turns out we didn't gloss the visors next. We actually glossed the blank shoulder pads ready for decals. Maybe we glossed the visors later. I'm sure we glossed them at some point. We then chose a few numerical decals and added them to the Elysians. I had to cut some of them up to get the specific numbers that I wanted.
Now, I'm not going to show you me applying the older decals because we've done a whole video on doing that, which you can see here. You've probably already seen it. Anyway, we did the same steps as we did in that video.
Next up, we return to our armor base color mix. I think this is the third time we've returned to it. It sounds a little inefficient, doesn't it? This time, using a small brush, we add a few scratches and chips to the markings on the armor, the red stripes and the decals we added previously, which Marcel doesn't appear to show anywhere. Oh well, hopefully you'll see them at the end. And here are all 60 Elysians with all the main paint layers applied. All the base coats are on and all the markings are ready. You can see the decals on there if you look closely. They are quite small. Marcel was actually tempted to call them done here.
Trying to find it. Temptation. You've got to get up behind it. Temptation.
Now, luckily, we resisted the urge and we managed to continue on. Did I say manage or managed?
Next up, we make a mix of Seraphim Sepia and Lamian Medium. This is my special shading wash mix. We apply this wash mix to all of the fatigues and armour of the Elysians. We don't cover the faces, visors or weapons though. We do, however, cover the gloves and boots.
Now, I did consider repainting the weapons, you know, like the las guns and things, but I felt they were still good enough from the previous paint job. If you fancy talking about repainting your miniatures or anything else hobby related, then please feel free to come along and join our friendly Discord server, which is not behind a paywall. There's a link in the description below, and there's also one here somewhere. We look forward to chatting to you there.
Here we go, it's the gloss varnish again. And can you guess what we are glossing? It's the visors. I told you we glossed them. I guess we did it at the end so we didn't get any of that wash mix on there and ruin our glossy effect. So with all the visors glossed, the Elysians are pretty much painted, but there is one more stage left to do. One of my favourite stages.
The basing. Again, I'm not going to show you me painting the bases in this video because again we did a whole video on the style of bases we're going to use for this project. Again, if you want to see that, here's a little link for you. I quite enjoyed making that one, you know.
Like all painting projects, we end them with a nice relaxing rimming session. We are using black to paint the rims as we feel it's the best colour. But I know some of you have other preferences, and that's fine. Also, we like to apply the black in a couple of thin, smooth coats to make sure it's nice and matte. Glossy rims look horrible. While we put our paints away, I just want to give a loving shout out to all our Patreons and channel members. Dan Yallop, Lee Blackley, Donald, Pinetree, Bobzilla, Charles Marlowe, Andrew Marrington, Nick Ellingham, Briars and Bantams, Tim Van Stralen, and our newest member, Sven V. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. We couldn't do it without you. We love you all.
We really do.
Now before we check out the finished Elysians, I just want to show you this page from the Anphelion project book. Hold on. It would help if I had it. If we go to around, where are we? About halfway through the book. There's the Trigon. Aha! Brood nest, a Tyrannid brood nest. I don't know if you can see that there. Down here, in the comments of the brood nest, it says, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Edward. And remember, Mrs. Snakeworks has said, when we hit 10,000 subscribers, we're allowed to order a Warhound Titan. So please smash that subscribe button and we can hit that target ASAP. If you are enjoying the content here on the channel, then please consider joining us on Patreon, the link to which is in the description below or up here somewhere. Now without further ado, let's check out the finished article, shall we?
And here we have them. 60 fully painted, based and finished Elysian D99 infantrymen. I'm really pleased with how they have come out, especially considering it was a quick repaint over a previous bad scheme.
I think the red visors and stripe details work really well over the green fatigues and armour. They should look great on the tabletop.
There is a small issue though, in that I've realised I haven't equipped the sergeants correctly. They should have had las pistols and close combat weapons. So I guess that's another job for a future video.
After painting these, we are really excited to begin work on some more of the D99. I think it might be Sentinels next, or maybe even their Inquisitor, Buddy Solomon Locke. Done!
Their Inquisitor Buddy, not Inquisitor Buddy Solomon Locke.
You put a comma there. A comma means pause, or maybe even pause, their Inquisitor Buddy, pause, Solomon Locke.
Yeah. So is there a comma there?
Yes!
Yeah, you didn't. You did the pause and their Inquisitor, pause, Buddy Solomon Locke. You said.
Okay, or maybe even pause, their Inquisitor Buddy, pause, Solomon Locke. Full stop.
That's
Happy?
fine. That's
Fine.
That's
Fine.
That's fine.
Fine.
Make sure you keep an eye out for that video in the near future. And as always, thank you very much for watching.
Hey, how come you turned that off?